Welcome to another episode of Rates and Barrels. We do not have the sultry voice of Derek Van Riper to guide us today. We are going to do our best. I will bungle along, and Jed Lowrie is here to help me as I bungle. Thank you so much, Jed. You said
happy
you were
to bungle with you.
yeah. You said you were at some. You said there was a sort of a stressful volleyball game. Was it a volleyball game that you were attending over the weekend? Was it high stakes or just
Yeah. I mean, it's those youth volleyball tournaments. My 12U is like, it means nothing and it means everything. Like I don't think the anxiety level is any higher for parents when you're watching your kids compete. So it's a lot of fun, and at the end of the day, right, no matter what the outcome is, you just got to make sure you remind them how much you love them and how great they did.
Yeah, I mean it's so crazy. We had an end of year scrimmage for my eldest, who he's in juniors, which is like the level past. It's like a 13 under baseball, and yeah, it's a scrimmage. It means nothing. It's like an inner city scrimmage, so it's like all the Palo Alto teams coming. It's a potluck. We're supposed to be hanging out, but my son gets the news that he's the starter. And
Yep.
and so he hasn't got a lot of chances to pitch this year. So I'm trying very hard not to be up at the fence and not to be yelling a lot of stuff. And I know his stomach is already kind of churning. And so I know that he's worried, and so I'm just trying to be supportive and engaged and try not to look like I'm as tense as I am. And I probably look pretty tense, but
Yeah, I was just gonna say good luck with that. Good luck with that, because I will say, like the body language, I think that's where big league managers really the good ones have figured that out. And I'm starting to figure that out too. Is like, your kids, they're picking up on every little body language, like, if disappointment, excitement. So yeah, I was just gonna
that's a
say
big one.
good luck with controlling your own emotions, because they all also feed off of that seemingly.
Yeah. So he had a good inning. He had a good
I
inning.
love
He
it.
gave up a blast, but
Happens to the
he
best of
won,
them.
and he did better than the other pitcher did in the first inning, and he got his outs, and he
There you
had a
go.
comebacker that he had to kind of matrix his way out of. So
Made the play, or just didn't get hit.
the play was made. He's the
Got it.
pitcher, so it kind of was going past him fast by the
Yep.
mound.
Yep.
What was funny was he threw harder after that. So
Yeah, got him fired up a little bit. I've
yeah,
seen that before.
yeah. So anyway, we got some news, and then we are going to get to 6 young hitters that have not
Mhm.
quite established themselves. We're going to try and use some of the new bat shape metrics and just what we see, and what we think about maybe their long-term futures, I guess,
Mhm.
and how they're a little bit different. Each of them different sort of combination of skills in terms of how tilted they are, how much loft they can get. They all pretty much have bat speed except for one of them, but we'll get to those guys. First, just a couple pieces of news around the big leagues. We got the news on Ronel Blanco's elbow, and it's not good. He's going to miss the year. I did have a question for you. So they have this starter named Colton Gordon,
Mm.
who is reminds me a little bit like Bubich. He's like this. He's a lefty that has a big breaking ball, and it's like
Yep.
it's a slow, mid 70s breaking ball, that he can locate really well. And what I've
Mm.
noticed with both Bubich and Gordon is I feel like a lot of right-handers give up on that pitch. It's backdoorish because it's so big. It'll end up maybe in the middle of the zone. So it's not like a backdoor that's just barely getting the zone. It's just I feel like they give up on it because it looks so big and it looks so slow that
Mm.
they're like, this is not a strike. and he's able to land it for strikes. And Bubic has done a lot with that as part of his arsenal. Did you? I guess you didn't really, as a switch, you would have been right-handed facing.
Right. Yeah.
If you faced like big, slow breaking balls, did you ever feel like you just gave up on them too early sometimes?
Certainly. I mean, especially the first couple of times you face a guy. So I think that's where those guys, the long-term success of guys like that is really just playing with eye levels. And you're trying to entice those guys to go up there and do more, right, against a guy like that. Like, oh, I haven't seen a guy throwing 92 in a month, and
Yeah.
so you think you're going up there. I mean, it's like Mark Burley, right? Is like these guys that you never really feel uncomfortable against, but you walk, the end of the game, you look back and you're like, how did I just get out 4 times? And it's because of that execution. I mean, Mark Burley was the prime example of that. A guy that you never really felt uncomfortable, but he always got you out. And so it was, it was doubly frustrating because of that. But that just goes to the man's ability to know what makes him good, execute, and then just get guys out. And I think there's a lot of value in that. So this guy, like you said, Bubic, moving the ball around, changing eye levels, feeding off of the energy that guys are coming up against them, using that against them.
Yeah, and Bubic is, maybe it's important. He's a little bit faster with his sweeper. It's at 83, but Bubic is the model for me for Gordon, which is that, even though you're throwing a pitch that supposedly has bad platoon splits, you can have some success throwing them by kind of using that back door a little bit and using the batter's tendency against them to sort of give up on that pitch. The other news that we've got is Miguel Amaya is out 4 to 6 weeks with an oblique injury. It's a little bit of a shame because the Cubs catching tandem had really been so great this year. Carson Kelly has really found something. Even at age 30, he's just having his best numbers supported by his best barrel rates and hard hit rates and even his best strikeout rates. So it's a real combination of things that came together. You had a couple of years where like you step back, and I think probably a lot of times it was injury, but when things came together later in your career, was it usually one thing, or was it just sort of an accumulation of factors that kind of came together to produce some of those? I always think of it as like when you came back to Oakland.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with health, and having a healthy off season. For me, it was all about just being able to be available and stay on the field and avoid injury. I dealt with my fair share of unique injuries and like collision type injuries that are not as common in baseball as opposed to basketball or football. But yeah, I think it was just a matter of having a healthy off season, feeling strong going into the season, and then being able to stay on the field. And I'm happy for Carson as a first time All-Star at 34 years old. It's good to see guys that are still at that age using the knowledge that they've gained and finding ways to still produce.
Yeah, there's not too much in his bat metrics that says that he made a huge change. One thing that he did was spread out a little bit more, but he's done that before. The bat speed is up a little bit. And I would just say that that's probably due to maybe even regular at bats is being a part of it, is just, step in the box, knowing you're going to get another at bat, after that and the next day. So I think they won't miss a beat necessarily, but I still like Amaya as one of the better young catchers in the game. Bryce Harper got hit in the elbow that he got TJ surgery on. They're saying that there's nothing broken, but When you got jolted in some place that you'd been dealing with pain over the past, you'd had surgery on, did it hurt more, didn't it?
Of course. I remember my first at bat back, from I tore the UCL in my right thumb, and my first at bat back was Clayton Kershaw. So I'm hitting right-handed. The bat is sitting in that surgically repaired thumb against a guy who is just pounding me in with cutters. That was one of the more uncomfortable at bats I think I've had in my career. Just like the level of trust too. I think Bryce is probably on the other side of, feeling comfortable and confident in the actual structural integrity of that repair. Just based on the way that he's swinging the bat, so I'm not as concerned. I think it's just making sure that the inflammation and the stiffness doesn't affect that, and you hope that there's no confidence that was changed in his ability to move with that arm, that surgically repaired arm. I'm not gonna. This is a guy who is highly successful, very confident in his abilities, and so I don't have any long-term concern. Obviously, assuming there's no microfracture or anything like that didn't show up on the initial X-ray that would prolong it. Assuming that it is structurally sound from a bone perspective, I wouldn't be too.
But even when he comes back, there's be a little bit of swelling, so it may not be like necessarily his best week.
Yeah, no, I would, I depending on how long they give him to kind of feel confident in it and to get the swelling down. I think that's a fair statement.
So Corey Seager is back for the Rangers. And one thing that we've been talking about a little bit with Corey Seager is that his injuries seem to be around the middle of his body. He's had a lot of hamstring and abdominal core hernia. I think he's had 2 hernia surgeries.
Yeah.
Obviously his team is thinking about it, and and I mean, when I say team, I mean not only his actual team, but probably his personal group of trainers and people he works with. When did you ever have a hernia injury?
Thankfully, no.
One of the ones I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. That I mean, anytime you start getting into core and groin and hamstring stuff, those are the types of things that can linger. And you look at the body of work. He's 31, played in 1,000 games. And started at 21. There is a little bit of a workload that you start thinking, are some of these going to start adding up? Obviously insanely talented.
Or have they been adding up, really?
Yeah, right. And we're just starting to see see the body of work catch up with him. But like I said, it's 4,500 plate appearances in the big league. It's it's a big workload. But it's not, it's not a lot, I will say. So I think this is some of these things that he's just going to have to manage. I mean, towards the end of my career, I just realized how much extra time it took to get ready on a day-to-day basis. So, I think as he moves into the later part.
What did you do to keep your core? Is it loose is the word, or you keep your hamstrings loose?
Stable. Yeah. Stable. I think core is stable, stability, a lot of rotation stuff. But I mean, just in terms of treatment, making sure that you're, showing up and, treating the bumps and bruises to make sure that they don't get worse. And just managing your body. I always found later in my career the recovery was really the challenging part. And so those day games after night games became exponentially harder as you got older. So I think it's probably, the Rangers.
What does that recovery look like? Are you taking an ice bath? Are you getting massaged? Like, All of it?
I mean, I'm all the above. I think for me, a lot of the contrast where I found value is contrasting, both before and after games, where you just you're really getting the blood flow, where you got you're going from hot to cold and getting that vasodilation where you're just getting fresh blood pumped throughout your body. Because that's to me that's what and before games I'm ending in hot, so the I'm feeling good, I'm feeling loose. After the games I was ending in cold. So just to kind of cool my body off, like feel that reset, and it always seemed to help on the margins.
Are there just like tubs and you're just getting into a nice tub and then you jump right into the hot tub next to it?
You got it.
Oh, wow. All
Yep.
right. The
That's
more
it.
you know. Kind of wish I had that just lying around for after my runs. I would especially like it. Although I can't imagine that being fun, getting into a bucket of ice, basically.
Like I mean, I think some guys, some guys, it's like a badge of honor that they're, jumping into water that's in the 40 degrees. I'm not,
you gingerly put yourself in it.
I don't know. I don't know if it's like a circulation thing. I always found too, if like with my hands and my feet, like if I was able to like keep my hands and my feet out of the water and or covered, it helped me stay in the water longer. And so that like my actual, like the rest of my body, outside of my hands and my feet, I could withstand a fair amount of time. But I also, like I said, I wasn't trying to break any world records. I was trying to trying to keep like enough. Like I was trying to, and just from like water temperature too, like I was trying to keep an appropriate, distance. So like if I was in the low 50s to mid 50s and then get the hot up to 100, I figured if there was a 50-degree difference, that was enough. Like I said, I wasn't trying to break any records on water temperatures.
My buddy John Baker, who's with the Pirates, was telling me that he really liked ice baths and he would do them at the beginning of the day. And I was like, he's the research. Yeah. Like he loves like reading the research, and he's like, they have this research that this good for this, good for this. And I was like, but why do you think it works? And he goes, well, one thing that I like about it is it's the worst thing you'll do all day.
You
get the worst thing you'll do all day out of the door, then you can have a great day.
No, that the psychology probably plays a little into that. Right? Like I said, I wasn't a big cold bath only. I'm a contrast guy, right? Like I like to get that, like, just that blood pumping. And so I think the contrast, going back and forth actually promotes that.
Yeah. The kids and I will do that, with those combination hot tub pools all the time. Got to keep it moving. I one thing about the Rangers is just it's been a really disappointing season for them, and the offense is hitting 222, 284, 359 for the year, and that's 27th best park adjusted line in baseball. And it's weird because the different players in here I still like, and some of them are doing well. Like Wyatt Langford is doing well. Josh Smith and Josh Young are fine. So Corey Seager coming into this will be meaningful. It's really the struggles of Jake Berger and Adolis Garcia that kind of stand out the most, and maybe Jock Peterson before he got hurt. What do you see anything when you think about this Texas Rangers team, or is this just some of these veterans have to get it going again?
Yeah. I look at, I look at what good teams do. They find a way to win. And, that pitching staff has only given up 195 runs, right? Where they've scored 185, and there's only two teams in the league that have scored fewer runs than that. And that's the Rockies and the Pirates. And you're talking on the margins, right? Like the Rockies have scored 176 runs and the Pirates have scored 173. So So you're not talking about wide gaps. The Royals are equal at 185, and the White Sox have actually scored more runs than the Rangers this year, believe it or not. And so yeah,
the Royals
I
are
think it's
above 500. So if they could, if we're talking about like extra run every 2 games or something, and they would
right.
they would have a different record.
And that's where you start looking at differentials and good teams versus bad teams. The good teams are the ones that find a way to win, right? Especially close games. And I mean, I think for the Rangers to only be 2 games below 500 and only scoring 185 runs, I mean, I do think that bodes well for them, assuming the pitchers stay healthy. And so there might be a little bit of a caveat there, but with the offense kind of underperforming at this point, I don't think they really have a choice in continuing to run those veteran guys out there, and just having faith that there'll be some sort of reversion to their historical production.
Yeah, it's possible there's a little bit of the effect of the schedule going on here. I mean, they just got swept by the Yankees.
Yeah.
They're going to have to fight Houston and Seattle all year, but those are and the Athletics, and they've got some flaws, each of those teams. But having already had to face the Dodgers, and the Red Sox twice,
Yep.
and the Yankees. Maybe there's some better days just coming from the schedule. I see the Nationals upcoming and the White Sox and Royals upcoming. So maybe they can just use a little bit of momentum caused by the schedule to get some W's up on the board. I mean, this is the team that won the World Series with a lot of these same players, and it would be such a shame to waste a DeGrom. It looks like this is a vintage DeGrom season, even though he just had an outing where he didn't strike a batter out for the first time. It's funny though, he only gave up 2 in like 7 innings, so I guess
I don't know. I don't know what it is about DeGrom, because the guy, like, he just gives off this energy that I know offense feels like they don't need to score because he's so darn good. I mean, we saw that play out with the Mets for his entire career there. It felt like the run production for him was very different than with any other starter, and that seems to have carried over to the Rangers. And I mean, the guy is just special, and he's got the stuff and the mentality. And I was always enthralled watching him. A guy that I would pay to price of admission to pitch,
oh my God,
to see pitch.
Yeah, it's because it's such great command with such great stuff. I mean, it's such a great combo.
No
The
doubt.
last 3 games, to your point, DeGrom, the Rangers have lost 1-2, 3-4, and they won one of them 1-0.
Literally.
So,
I don't know. I don't know what it is. He's I don't know if that's he's just he is an ultimate competitor, and is going to find a way to keep his team in the game. But man, and that's where a lot of this a lot of this data comes from, is like win-loss records don't really matter because he can't control the offense. But here's a guy that I know, regardless of the situation, is going to keep you in the game.
Yeah. I wanted to say maybe it's because he gets matched up against other aces. Early in the season, that's the case. But by this point of the season, all the schedules are all messed up. So, like, he did face Hunter Brown in one of those. But he also lost to Ryan Yarbrough. So, yeah, it's things come and go, and you can't hit for your team, at least not anymore.
Although he can.
Yeah, he would love to. He's definitely in the Greinke type where he's like, "Oh man, give me a bat, I'll be good."
Yes. For good reason. I've seen it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those guys that have a bat in their hand. We've got upcoming. We've got 5 young hitters, 6 young hitters that we want to talk about that have not quite established themselves, but do have something interesting going on under the hood.
Yeah, no doubt.
The first hitter that I wanted to talk about was Junior Caminero, and we put together a sort of list here, this graphic that has different stats for these guys. And what you can see with Junior Caminero is not a great walk rate, pretty good bat to ball skills, about a league average chase rate. The barrel rate is just barely above league average due to 80 or 100th percentile 80 bat speed. He's got 78 mile an hour bat speed. That's why he can hit the ball 117, hard hit rate through the roof. And when we get to the shape things, I think we get to a little bit of the flaws. You've got a 27-degree angle that's below normal tilt. The attack angle is below normal tilt. But what is interesting to me, and I think we could do some analysis here before it's all been played out in the public sphere in terms of vetting this sort of analysis. But what I see there at the end there was he's getting the ball out in front, but he's not getting the attack angle. So even though he's getting the ball, 3-4 inches out in front of the average hitter, he's not getting that benefit. So it's flat through that part. Even he's not even getting that little uptick out in front of the plate. So you can't tell Junior Caminero necessarily that the way to hit more homers is to get it further out in front.
No, I've got sat down and went through all these guys and wrote some notes, and that's exactly what I have. That the bat speed is undeniable, right? You look at that and what he's able to produce, and what I'd love to see from him is getting more on plane. I think this is a guy who creates even at 27. It's not the flattest swing in the league. But to your point, like he is hitting it out front, so he continues to seemingly make that like downward angle through the ball, and I think that's what ultimately. And if you look at the squared up rate, I think that's the one that jumps off the page for me. Is if you look at what the bat speed is and the pitch speed, and I think it's 80% of what the maximum exit velocity is the squared up rate. And so that squared up rate being in the 19th percentile is something that I look at as like, hey, let's get a little bit more on plane with this, and then quite frankly take more chances in the zone. His whiff rate is 66 in the 66th percentile. And he's not striking out a lot, right? He's chasing a lot. So, you got to find a way to stay in the zone a little bit more. And I think that will happen with a guy, is still 21 years old. So not a ton of professional experience, even in the minor leagues. And so I would say that, as he evolves, I'd be looking for him to just, maybe work on pitch recognition, and then taking more chances in the zone. And then I think with that, I think a squared up rate would go higher, that he could actually leverage that bat speed a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, when he's looking good, and you can see on this homer, this is a relatively high pitch for Junior Caminero. And when it's a high pitch, then it all works out. And I was just seeing like sort of a graphic of, if you're trying to hit the high pitch, that's actually sort of around a 27-degrey angle. That's literally his angle. So when you look at a homer like this, it all lines up for him.
Right.
Against Atlanta. And a high shot back into deep left center. That's got good carry. Will it go? Gone! Home run, Caminero.
Like his trunk seems very vertical. And of course it has to be to hit a high pitch. You have to sort of be vertical. And I wonder if if there's a flexibility issue. I mean, he is like kind of a stockier dude. I wonder if there's a flexibility issue in terms of bending down to get those low pitches. And if there is just something in his body that's keeping him from getting more tilt and getting down there, to do something better with the lower pitches, then I don't know if I disagree with you, but I think that the way out would be to just spit on everything in the lower third. you know,
Yeah.
and really just challenge guys, challenge guys to hit that. He's like a Soto, right? Soto has poor bat shape. Like he has a flat bat path. What he does is he basically spits on everything low in the zone until he has to do something about it. And then he can do something about it. But generally he's looking to make the pitchers come up in the zone. And if Junior Caminero can see, that's what's missing for Caminero is he doesn't have that elite pitch. Like that's where I agree with you 100%. Is doesn't have that elite pitch recognition. If you can make them come up in the zone, meet them where he's at his strongest, that's I think. So the way out is something about pitch recognition, and it's that should just get better with age, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the hardest. It is the hardest skill to develop, right? And it takes the longest is pitch recognition. So and this is where when you're taking batting practice, or you're even taking flips and you're hitting one speed, one spot, you can fool yourself into thinking that you're swinging the bat well when you know what's coming. And I look at your example of Juan Soto. Like I look at that swing and his ability to get on plane. I think that he's far more in his legs, and so he's able to match the plane low, high, wherever it is, far better. And so I don't see Caminero's tilt as a problem. I think the contact point is great. I mean he's in the 85th percentile in making contact out front. I think that's great. I just think that the ability to get in your legs and match the plane of the ball, to your point, like he's kind of seemingly taking the same swing regardless of the pitch location. So when those pitches are up, like that home run, his lower body just kind of naturally syncs up with the plane of that pitch up.
Right.
And so I think it's the ability to learn how to match the plane with a similar tilt and contact point for lower pitches, and the way that I would look at it.
That's interesting. I remember Adrian Belcher told me that we were talking about how he hit a home run off of one knee.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, from the outside, I was like, that's crazy. Like you were using half of your legs. Like and he was like, it's not crazy at all. I dropped that leg when I saw it was a curveball.
Yep.
That's basically
exactly
what you're talking about, is like using your body to match the plane. So so there could be, if there isn't necessarily a plate discipline way out, where he's definitely not going to wake up tomorrow and or even the next 3 years and be Soto when it comes to chase rates. I think that is actually the hardest thing to change. So maybe the way out is a little bit more what we were talking about with the flexibility to bend more, or working on what he can do with his lower half to basically, if he wants to swing where it's kind of like stiff upper half, then can he like lower himself with his legs so that he's
because I just don't
almost.
I don't view eliminating the bottom third of the zone as like a viable option for sustained success. So I think that you're especially with the vertical break in the game now, right? You're going to get those big 12-6 curveballs that are
coming back too.
Sinkers are coming back. Like I think you're just going to get a lot more balls at the bottom of the zone, and I think I have a hard time imagining sustained success by eliminating the lower part of the zone. So I think if I'm him, I'm working on matching the plane on that lower body, and that to me is more being in your legs, getting down, recognizing. I do think pitch recognition does matter in that, but it's really being an athlete and matching the ball in space as opposed to just taking the same swing robotically.
Interesting. So there's a little bit of similarity here with the second guy and a little bit of difference though. Noelvi Marte here, if we were looking at these graphics again, a little bit better eye, at least he's taking more walks, got that same bat to ball ability. I would say there's a lot of similarities here in terms of good bat speed, not as much tilt. A little bit of a key difference is a little more tilt than Junior Caminero, a little bit better attack angle. But one thing that we have talked about in the past with Noelvi Marte is that he's had these great max EVs, and then the power, the actual demonstrated power, like his barrel rate's even worse than Junior Caminero's, and the demonstrated power that's come from all this bat speed has been less than some of the parts a little bit. And I don't know, maybe these guys are too similar. But one difference is Noelvi Marte is getting even further out in front, and he has improved his attack angle. So maybe he actually represents something that Junior Caminero could still do. Like there's 2 more inches out in front, Junior Caminero could get it, and maybe that would finally access some of that lift in the end of his swing. But Marte also doesn't have that 80 bat speed. It's more like 70. What did you notice that differentiated him all from Caminero, or is he just very much like Caminero to you?
Yeah, I mean, I look at the K rate, right? He's not qualified. It doesn't have enough at bats, and so it's you're extrapolating a little bit here, but if you look back at the minor league performance too, like this is a guy who puts the ball in play, relatively low K rate at all the stops that he's had, and then I look at that K rate, and then I look at the whiff rate. And to me, it's a guy that kind of like Caminero that probably needs to take a little bit more of a chance inside the zone. And to me, that's a young, it represents a young player that hasn't really learned who he is at the big league level yet, or the pitches that he can handle. And so, he's not striking out a lot. Walk rate is okay. Chase rate is still high. The squared up rate is much higher than Caminero. So once again, this is a guy that I'm looking at to say, let's figure out these pitches that you're capable of driving in the zone. And when you recognize that pitch, let it go a little bit more, because the whiff rate is okay. But I would like to see him take a few more chances in the zone. And he's off to, I wrote down 2023, really exciting profile, right? Like you got a 21-year-old kid that gets 114 at bats and hits 316 with 3 homers, 6 stolen bases. And like, hey, we got something here, right? And he was a big part of that Seattle trade to get Castillo. And then 24, as a 22-year-old, takes a pretty big step back just in terms of, bat to ball. And, I don't know, in the whiff rate, really went down. K rate really went up. So you're talking about a guy who took a big step back in 2024, as he kind of got exposed at the big league level, 242 plate appearances. And this year has seemingly taken that step back. There's some recognition in 73 plate appearances, kind of getting that average back up, some more homers. So this is a guy that, and you're talking about a sprint speed in the 96th percentile. There's a guy who's a great athlete that has shown, plate discipline, I will say, at least to walk and not strike out at the minor league level. So I think I'm looking at this as a guy that is still learning who he is at the big league level. But the ceiling is still high.
Yeah, looking at his history, he's had higher tilts in the past. It's, this is something that does get affected by how you're being pitched. So it's possible he's just being pitched higher in the zone. That's why his tilt has gone down. It's not quite as flat of a swing. I think when you see him swing on this double right here, we can watch him double. I think that it's not quite the same flat swing that you see from Caminero.
There's the 0-2 from Meyer to Marte. And that is hit hard, stung towards the gap left center field. And Myers is going to cut it off. Fraley's on his way to third. He'll stop there. If that ball got by Myers, that's probably a run. But this is the first real threat of the evening.
Yeah, I think he's, his hands are above the ball there. And he does have that verticality in the trunk. that seems like that Caminero. But again, those are high pitches, so
yep, same
matches.
thing, right? Like high, relatively flat swing. I mean, even at 29 degree tilt, but that high pitch, that high velocity at the top of the zone kind of matches up with that tilt. So I don't know, bottom of the zone against him, but once again, I think if he can keep his chase rate down, I like the upside here, especially with a high output athlete like this, with the sprint speed and the bat speed that he has.
So you're not so worried about the lack of tilt with these guys. I mean, they're 21 and 23. You think that they have the opportunity to, especially I think with Marte, with some higher tilts in the rearview mirror. I think he's shown the ability to move differently. And do you, before we unveil all the names, do you have a favorite of these six, and is Junior or Marte one of them?
I mean, I think, Caminero is one guy that is really exciting for me, just in terms of the bat speed. I think we didn't talk about defense with him, and how that might limit some of his upside value on the other side of the ball. But there is one more that we're going to talk about later that I'm, just in terms of ceiling, I think I like the best.
Ooh, right.
And so we'll save that one. But like I said,
I'm guessing it won't be the next one here. I don't want to be negative about him, but he definitely is the outlier in terms of the rest of these guys. Chase, Meidroth, if we look back at this graphic, he's definitely got the best plate approach on here. He's going to make the most contact. He's probably going to have the best walk rate of anybody on here. Look at his chase rate. It's like half the other guys. He has an 18%, where Junior, Caminero, and Marte have 35%. He has a 1% barrel rate. I'm surprised even, I don't know if the 40% hard hit rate will sit, and that might actually be pretty meaningful for his career. Because if he can at least hit the ball hard, in the angles he's hitting them in, then he can be a really productive hitter. But 107 max EV, 68 bat speed, that's below average, and it's frankly it's fairly below average. I mean, the average is 71.6, so he's sitting 4 miles an hour below average. I don't know how much tilt in these things matter if you're not trying to hit for power, but he lets the ball travel more than the other two guys that are trying to hit for power. And so I think on some level, his approach might be well within his skills. You know what I mean? Like, he's not chasing, he's letting the ball travel. He's trying to have a fairly adjustable swing that he can make all this contact with. So maybe he doesn't have the upside of a Marte and Caminero, but maybe he can really do what he does.
I think I love this kid. I mean, I think that he's not the one that I think has the highest ceiling, but I think he's got the highest floor, right?
Yeah.
I think he's got the highest floor. This is a guy that I think is going to be an impact player at the big league level for a long time. Like, somebody you're going to want in your lineup. And then you look at, you got a guy who's in the 91st percentile for range, according to the metrics. And so, he just looks like a really productive player to me. And, I'm looking at his squared up rate, which he hasn't qualified yet, but you're talking about 42% squared up rate. So, he's really efficient to the ball. And, you're talking about a kid that's 23 years old, first season. He's in the 96th percentile for chase, 98th for whiff, 92nd for Ks, 81st for walks. So, like, this kid can just flat out hit. And so I mean, and you look at the flat swing, it's a relatively deep, intercept point, 29 inches, as compared to his body. So I think that as he, gets more into his career, you're talking about 129 plate appearances. I think the natural evolution of this is you're going to feel a little bit more confident, feel like you belong. and then we kind of took this approach with the last two, or I did at least, with taking more chances in the zone. Like, this kid clearly knows the zone really, really well and is very efficient to the ball. And so I think he's going to, as he feels more confident and comfortable that he is a big league hitter, I would love to see that chase rate actually go down and in the right situations, let it rip.
Yeah, something like maybe like Stephen Kwanish outcome seems possible for him, where maybe he, pushes that home run total, maybe it's single digits for the first couple of years of his career, but
Yep.
maybe he peaks with some 12s and 14s as he, kind of takes some situational hacks like you're talking about.
Yep.
The one thing I wanted to bring up was that we've seen this profile before not work. And, I'm not trying to be overly negative about a player, but, Nick Madrigal was a guy who came up in Chicago,
Sure.
and had, great contact skills. I think first, we haven't been talking about this so much, but one of the differences is that defense matters. And I think Meidroth, even though he had, we had to show the video, I don't know if you saw it, of him trying to field the fly ball and it bounced
Of
on his
course,
head.
of course.
But I think, I think in terms of true talent, defensive ability, he's got defense that'll keep on the field, and it's defense that's better than even a Luis Arias's defense or whatever. If he gets put in this bucket of guys who make a lot of contact and don't have a lot of bat speed. Nick Madrigal's defense was never really a good thing, and he really had to work hard to even get passable at certain positions.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, I'm looking at Madrigal too. Like I think that the reality there is, you just didn't have, you have a much different chase rate and a much different walk rate, right? And so I think this is where assuming that Chase can maintain the chase rate and the walk rate that he
that
is.
is what came with a scouting report for sure.
With what? Sorry.
Meidroth's scouting report was like,
okay, yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's pretty consistent with Madrigal, right? Like he didn't whiff, he didn't K. He squared the ball up, more often than not, based on the bat speed that he exhibit. But I just look at the chase rate being, it's not qualified in 23, the one I'm looking at right now. But the chase rate is below average, right? The walk rate is 3.4% and a chase rate 29.6. Like to me that's a very different profile than Chase Meidroth, where you have a guy who, I would say that Madrigal presents as a guy who is going to hit the ball if you throw it up there, but he's going to swing at a lot of things. Maybe the rosin bag.
Yeah, right. And I do think that there's, we're not emphasizing bat speed for this type of player because it's not plus. But there is a difference between Nick Madrigal's bat speed and Chase Meidroth. Is it, Nick Madrigal has 65 on our bat speed. And I think that there may, with all the sort of discussions had about bat speed, there may still be a sort of bottom level that you have to get to be a major leaguer. If you look at bat speed, for example, at high schoolers, and then you look at bat speed at college players, and you look at bat speed in the pros,
sure,
like they're each an order of magnitude higher. And so 65 may just not play. 65 just may be something that worked in college because you were seeing more 88 mile an hour fastballs and 91s, and just not going to work up here. So
Yep. And I think that, like I said, I look at, if you're going to be a lower bat speed guy, to me, there has to be some real discipline in that, and then efficiency with the squared up rate. So I think Madrigal squared a lot of balls up. He didn't whiff a lot. And that's a guy where, once again, Madrigal, maybe there was an opportunity to maybe whiff more, right? Take bigger chances in spots. And I think that's what I'm suggesting with Chase, as he feels a little bit more confident and a little more comfortable in the box. Like not so much where, he's dropping in the 50th percentile. I just don't think that's who he is. And it probably, with the bat speed, wouldn't match up to be positive production. But I think with a little bit of a drop, you could see more extra base hits, see a few more balls go out of the ballpark.
Yeah. That said, Luis Ariz and Jacob Wilson have minus, and Stephen Kwan have under 65 on our bat speed, but they also have really short swings for the most of them. So, there is no one size fits all, but I do like, at 68 miles an hour, Meidroth has more in common with Jung-Hoo Lee than he does necessarily Nick Madrigal. And he's hanging out with Victor Scott and Jake Myers and Nico Horner. I think that's a great place for him to be. And Nico Horner in particular seems like maybe a model for Meidroth. Someone who can give value with the legs and give value with the glove and make a lot of contact and have surprising pop if it's
just
like a 30 or whatever.
And just command the zone. Be a tough at bat, right? Like every single at bat you go up there, if they make a mistake, you might pop them, but at the end of the day, you're gonna be a pain in the ass when you're up there, right? And the pitcher's gonna make their pitch, and you're gonna get a hit off of it, and it's just gonna put them on tilt.
Yeah. Here's a representative ball in play from Meidroth. I thought it was just a nice little double, and here he goes.
Hits this one hard into the gap in left center field. Welcome back, Chase Meidroth. As the helmet flies off, and the youngster, the Cali kid, with a double to start the.
I mean, that's a single for some people,
Certainly, yeah, and I mean that's one of those mistakes, right? That guy just throws a little, sinker over the plate, and he's, the pitch recognition is there, the efficiency is there for him to rip that ball in the gap, regardless of the situation.
And in order to get his walks, he has to be able to do something with that, and
absolutely,
a double like they're single,
Yeah, no, he's the walks that he is creating are because he has the ability to foul pitch, tough pitches off. They're not, I don't think any pitcher is walking up there, scared to pitch to him, that they're going to give up a bunch of homers to him. So he's earning every walk that he gets and showing it with his plate discipline.
So this next guy might actually, I don't know if he's my favorite, but the more that I looked into the numbers that we're looking at for this, I liked him a little bit better.
Well, this is the guy that, if I'm looking at, if I'm looking at the guys we are
really
evaluating, this is the guy that I look as the highest upside.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
I look at Pages and I see the, I see the tilt and the bat speed and that contact point that he's making. There's a lot to like in this player. I mean, you're talking about a high output athlete too, with a high sprint speed, well above average bat speed, appropriate whiff, and K, I think, for the profile. And it really just comes down to me to the chase, right? Like he's chasing a little, out of the zone too much for sustained success at this point. But I think if you look at all of the other intangibles in terms of bat speed, contact point, and I just, the sweet spot rate, I know the barrel percentage is only 42%, but I think a lot of that, like I said, a lot of that is pitch.
42nd
percentile. I'm sorry. 42nd percentile. So, 42nd percentile for the barrel rate. I'm not as concerned to that, still a guy that is at 650 plate appearances. But like I said, a guy that if he can stay in the zone, you look at a guy that with the tilt and the bat speed, that he has, like I said, I don't want to go too far with this one, and the contact point, but there's a lot of it trending towards like an Aaron Judge type, swing path. And that's why I say that when you have a high output athlete like him, the ceiling is really, really high. And it just, to me, it's all gonna boil down to that chase rate.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, he had better walk rates in the minors, and he had
Yeah.
some really good ones. And we don't really have access to all of his chase rates in the minors, so we can't tell how that changed over time. But I can't tell you that his chase rate was lower last year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that's in him to improve that. But the things we liked about him, he had the best tilt of this group. Pages did. And he didn't have the best bat speed, but, you know, there's a relationship there between the two. And,
Yeah.
you know, what we've heard is that it's kind of hard to marry that, because you were saying that you're working against gravity a little bit. So for
Yeah.
him to have that tilt and still have above average bat speed, I think that's really exciting. One of the better attack angles, and he's not necessarily getting the ball out in front as much as other guys. So there's still maybe a little bit of a chance to uncover as he gets more comfortable. Maybe as he chases less and becomes more aggressive on the pitches he does swing on. That's the toggle that you find with age, right? It's like but what you can look in the numbers and see, he is not, there's uncovered ground for him.
Yeah.
When he's making contact 31 inches out in front of the plate, or
Yep.
31 inches out in front of his center of mass.
Mass. Yeah.
And then Noelvi Marte is making it 36 inches out, and Junior
Yep.
Caminero is making it 34 inches out. I feel like they don't, like Caminero and Marte don't have as much uncovered ground. They can't get the ball much further than that. You can't get the ball 40 inches out, you know?
Yeah, but I think a lot of that has to do with the tilt of the swing. I would be concerned actually if Pages started to hit the ball much further out front with the tilt that he has, because you're just eventually going to run. You're going to run out of room, right? Like, you know, there's not like when you have a flatter swing, you can make contact further out front and still have room to go. With the tilt that Pages is swinging at, and I don't view tilt as good or bad. I view it like as an aspect of the profile. But I wouldn't want to see Pages make contact much further out front, especially with the chase rate that he has. I think that, like, you know,
well, I'm assuming that he would cut the chase rate and be selectively aggressive and get some get selective pitches out in front.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting point that the tilt has something to do with what you can do out in front. I would just say that, like, it does look like, of the people that we will talk about today, that he has the best collection of things for possibly the best power upside of the group.
Yeah, exactly.
The only difference is that Caminero does swing the bat 6 miles an hour faster. So, you know, that might be the difference.
Well, and once again, like, you know, the bat speed obviously plays huge into the upside here, but I think that I think what Pages has demonstrated so far is that you know, he does have the ability to drive the baseball pretty much in any part of the zone. And I think that to me, and then you add that with, you know, the sprint speed, the fielding value, where, you know, Caminero is not the athlete that Pages is in terms of sprint speed, arm strength, some of these other metrics. And but the bat speed is clearly there. And I think with Pages, like I said, I think it's a matter of him staying in the zone, pitch recognition. And, you know, I would almost say with that, you know, with the tilt that he has and the bat speed that he has, I actually think there's an argument to be made that he could let the ball travel a tick deeper and still be able to drive baseballs.
You know, one of the points that Coach Rodriguez made yesterday when he came on was that one of the nice things about tilt is that you can miss the ball. You know, I think he was challenging some of the beliefs that we've had about flat swings versus steep swings, and he was kind of saying that, you know, the steep swing, you can maybe miss the ball a little bit and have some better outcomes. So he was saying, like, a flat swing, when it misses the ball a little bit, it's a pop-up, right? Or a hard ground ball. He was saying with a tilted swing, when you miss the ball, it can be like kind of a filleted opposite field double, or like a hard single, you know, when because you're the bat's coming through, and if you miss the ball a little bit, you can be like this, right? And instead of, when you're flat and you miss the ball, it's a pop-up, right? But if you're like this and you miss the ball, you can actually get some value out of that. That might be a double to the opposite field.
Once again, this argument just boils down to theory versus practice, right? So I don't disagree with the theory. I'm just saying in practice, none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. And so if you're like, and that's why I say, like, I look at tilt, I look at these things as just a portion of the evaluation process, because, you get into an uncontrolled environment, you're not going to be able to just like, nobody's going to just stand there and wait for their pitch. And like, you're going to be standing there a long time if you're just waiting for the pitch that, you got in batting practice. And I guess my point is none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. And and that's why I say, I don't view a tilted swing or a flat swing as inherently good or bad. It's the other factors involved that matter, right? And that's where I look at a contact point where Pages is making it 31 inches out front of his mass with a high tilt and high bat speed. And I think there's actually, that's why I said that,
you like that all together. I
like it all together. And that's why I also say there's an ability to let the ball travel a little bit deeper for him in this moment when you have a really high chase rate.
Yeah.
Because I still think if he catches the ball deeper with the tilt and the bat speed that he has, he's still going to drive a lot of baseballs, right? Like, and this is, once again, like, I'm talking about in practice versus theory.
Right. And he has the bat speed to take balls out, Oppo, and he has the bat speed to make those doubles. So exactly. I like that. This next batter, that we gotta be a little bit faster. We always do this, but
we don't have DVR to keep us on schedule today.
Right.
We're just riffing.
Where are you? But we have two more left. We got Kristian Campbell and Brett Baty. Kristian Campbell and Brett Baty both have above average bat speed. Baty's is plus. They have the same tilt. Campbell has a better attack angle and gets the ball out in front a little bit. They have the same kind of hard hit rate. Baty has been barreling the ball this year, but has had a real problem generally hitting the ball into the ground. I was surprised to find that his tilt was above average. I thought that he must have a flat swing. That's why he's hitting the balls in the ground. So instead, what I've diagnosed for Baty is that he lets the ball travel too much. And he needs to go get that ball. I think there's still room for him to go get the ball further than he's going right now. I don't have a diagnosis of something being wrong with Campbell. I'm just excited about a guy with a 73 mile an hour bat speed that does not seem to have the problems of Baty. Like, he's not somebody, he's getting the ball at 29 inches. He's got an 11-degree attack angle. That's the highest attack angle of anybody in this sample. So he's going to put the ball in the air. He has a good max EV at 112. I just generally believe in him. I know he's in a bit of a slump. I think he's got all the skills. Baty is a little bit more of a complicated one for me because he's letting the ball travel so much, and he's barreling the ball now, but he hasn't in the past. He has plus bat speed, second best bat speed in this group. Are you just sort of generally positive about Campbell and then and inquisitive about Baty like I am, or what do you see with these two?
Yeah, I mean, I look at Campbell, and I'm looking at a 75 percentile chase rate, 77 percentile walk rate, and so here's a guy who is not going out of the zone. He's walking, but he's whiffing in the 25th percentile and striking out in the 17th percentile. That tells me he's just flat out getting beat in the zone, right? He's not he's not leaving the zone. He's walking, he's taking his walk. So he's a disciplined hitter, but he's flat out getting beat in the zone. And that's where I guess my concern would be a little bit higher on that one, because you can't survive in the big leagues getting beat in the zone. And so here's a guy that
they are pitching him high in the zone. He's missing. He has a 50, I know, K%. I don't know what that means when you're talking about a heat map, but he has a large red up and away and low and away. So he's got some places he can be pitched to, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I just look at I look at that that whiff rate as compared to the chase and walk rate, the whiff and K rate, and they just, to me, that means he's getting beat in the zone a lot. So clearly the kid has really good pitch recognition and he's got good discipline. So there's just that he's got to find a way to let that bat speed play. And so I think that this is a young kid, 22 years old, virtually no experience in the minor leagues, figuring out who he is at the major league level, right? And he's shown the discipline, he's shown the pitch recognition with the chase and the walk, and just got to find a way to recognize those opportunities in the zone and not miss them.
Yeah, his swing and strike rate is much lower than his strikeout rate suggests, and he's had really good swing strike rates in the minors. So
yeah,
I'm going to bet on him making this adjustment. And
yep.
I also think back to the spring where he wasn't hitting well, and then he made some sort of adjustment that I didn't really see necessarily right away. And the whole narrative around him changed. Like the team was like, he's ready. He's our opening day, starting second baseman. And it wasn't because he hit a bunch of homers. Like maybe he was fighting off these high pitches in spring, and they was like, that's all we needed to see, So I have a feeling he's made one big adjustment this spring already, and we're a month later and he needs to make his next one, and I kind of think he's going to do it. Baty has taken longer to make these adjustments. I mean, Baty has really struggled for the last 3 years, and I guess it's because he really likes to let the ball travel, despite having a good eye, not a great eye, but a good eye, and great bat speed. You'd think I think if I would tell somebody with a 76 mile an hour bat speed that was, had a 27, was getting the ball out in 27 inches in front of himself, I would say, I think go get that ball. I think that this is the one you've been talking about, selective aggression and aggression in the zone. This is the one where I'd be like, come on, you have this great bat speed. Like, take advantage of it. Go get that ball.
Yeah. And I, so my final thoughts on Kristian Campbell is like, this is a guy we're watching kind of make professional baseball adjustments at the major league level. And, with the ability that this kid has, like, I'm not betting against him. So I just want to make that clear. I think that this is a kid that knows how to play the game and is just figuring out who he is at the big league level. And then to your point with Brett Baty, like, this is a big, strong kid with elite bat speed. He's got a higher tilt swing. And when he hits it, it's a hard hit ball, right? I mean, he's barreling a lot of balls, although the squared up percentage is relatively low for the bat speed. So I think what I wrote down in my notes was there's got to be just a better pitch recognition, right? I think, and to your point, selective aggressiveness. It's just, to me, this one is a pitch recognition that he just hasn't been able to find the pitches that he's able to do damage on consistently. You're talking about a high chase rate, a high whiff rate, a high K rate, and a low walk rate. I think a lot of that just has to do with pitch selection. And so I think he's done a better job this year, clearly, with his, the average exit velocity. But like I said, I would love to see a little bit more efficiency with the squared up rate to let that bat speed play.
One thing that is super weird is, even though he's doing so well this year, last year he had a 238 slugging on four seamers. This year he has a 313. So he really does his damage on secondary pitches, which is just, again, it's weird for me, for somebody with plus bat speed, to do the damage on secondary pitches. What it suggests to me is those are the pitches he's catching further out in front.
Of course. And that's where, he's probably, I would guess in the past, he's probably, beat on fastballs and outspeed or out front on the off speed, and has is probably a little bit, more comfortable at the big league level now. And is starting to figure out, the pitches that he handles, but I still think there's an opportunity to be a little bit more efficient to the ball and pick better pitches to swing at, because I think a guy that is, has the barrel rate that he has and the bat speed that he does, to have a squared up percentage that's 24%. That just, to me, that's a level of efficiency that could go up.
Well, he cut 12 inches between the distance and between his feet. So he's trying. I think that speaks to a little bit to what you're talking about in terms of maybe being more efficient with his movements. He's tweaking the stance a little bit, and he's become a little bit more open. So he's trying to find something. I would just say that I was a little bit surprised. I put him on this list because I was a little bit surprised to see that combination of bat speed and tilt, given this guy has hit so many ground balls. And I think that he is, for our fantasy listeners, I think he's a really intriguing guy to pick up if you're selling this year. He'd be an interesting young guy that could be in the process of putting these disparate skills that he actually has together. I mean, nothing leaps off the page as being a real problem. Even letting it travel, there are guys who succeed letting it travel, and he has the bat speed to do that. But to me, it suggests that there's a little bit more that he can squeeze out of this, and he can really put this together. So all of these guys I'm pretty excited about. So I don't think that I'm negative about any of them. I think we did give some examples of, Chase's. You got the lower power output possibility. I think we both are also in agreement that this type of analysis really circles Andy Pages on this page. And I was more positive about him coming out of this than going into this. But I really appreciate you giving your analysis, your hitter eye to this, and checking out a group of youngsters. DVR, please come back. Please come back. I don't know how to end this. I just know that I thank Jed Lowrie for his work. I thank the listeners for listening. It's something that I'm supposed to do. I say something about joining our Discord. I think we have an invite in the somewhere. Find it. You can bug me on the socials. I'm Eno Sarris on Twitter, on Bluesky, everywhere. You got Jed at what was your Instagram handle?
Just Instagram. I think it's just Jed.Lowrie.
Jed.Lowrie on Instagram. And thanks for listening.
Thanks.